Hello and welcome to Picture Astrology. In this video we will look at how the year 2021 can pan out for all the zodiac signs. Now there are many events which unfold in one year, but due to limited time we will focus on some of the most significant and important aspects of year 2021 for each of the signs. This is what is called as Varsh Pravesh Kundli, or the chart at the beginning of 2021 year. And looking from the Aries perspective, we get a chart in which the cardinal houses 1, 4, 7 and 10 are very well occupied by some of the major planets. And these houses of these cardinal houses also have the active signs of 1, 4. So now let's move on to the second sign, that is Taurus. So the Taurus folks are starting this year with Jupiter and Saturn, both big planets, placed in their 9th house. And at the start of the year, Moon will also be posited right opposite to this in the 3rd. And add to that the Lord of your sign, Venus, placed in the 7th. So Venus will have a direct aspect on the Taurus sign itself. This indicates a kind of a beginning of a very good time for Taurus people. Especially the next 2 to 2.5 years of time will give you many new opportunities of growth and development. And with Rahu in the 1st house, depending upon the strength of your own horoscope, these opportunities could even be life-changing. But there are definitely few things to watch out for. First of all, although 9th house is strong, Jupiter here is debilitated, along with, at least at the beginning of year, a strong 12th house as well. So it is important that you take advice from your elders or family members. This is the time when, if you dispassionately listen to them, their help could prove to be very beneficial. And that help could also be in terms of monetary help, money to start any new business, or helping or joining the family business. Or if nothing else, then simply talking to them and understanding their view. How much of that advice you have to take is up to you, obviously, but at least take that advice. Because this simple act can help you mitigate a lot of effects of Venus, your Lord of the sign, being with Ketu and Mars in the 12th house. So the next thing is a lot of travel. We have, you're starting here with Moon in the active sign, in the watery sign in the 3rd house, 9th also in an active sign with Jupiter and Saturn, and Mars again in an active sign in 12th house. Add to that the ascendant Lord in the 7th. So a lot of travel is on the card, and those travel will be beneficial as well. The travel may not only be just for professional work, but for religious or spiritual pursuit too. But at the same time, position of Mars is such that it can show a lot of expenditure on various things, especially in the first 2 to 3 months. Initial 2 to 3 months you have to be more careful and make sure you do not spend unwisely. And that's where this advice from elders also comes into play, because that that expenditure may not just be of monetary things, but it could also be wasted time and efforts which could be saved by a timely advice. Now another very important area in this year would be regarding your partnerships and personal life. So especially if you are unmarried and looking for partners right now, and this is more specifically for male friends of ours, because we have Venus in the 7th, which is the Karaka of wife, very close to Ketu, along with aspect of Mars from the 12th. So at least in the first 2 to 3 months, let's go slow. Try to not commit on to anything as far as personal relationship is concerned, and also this is the time to show some patience and restraint in your relationship. For married folks, health of their partner and also of the family members, including your kids or children, especially the younger ones, will be an area which will occupy you at least in the initial months. Now coming to business partnerships, the placement of the planets here is such that you can face not only difference of opinion but also potential losses which you might perceive to be because of the aggressiveness or misjudgment of your business partner rather than yourself. And with Ketu's placement here in the 7th, which will go on for a long time in this year, you need to make sure that you do not keep that grudge or become vindictive towards your business partner, and focus on many other important opportunities which you are getting. Because see, as we discussed in the beginning, Jupiter Saturn throughout the year will be dancing around some of the most beneficial houses in your horoscope, and they will give you many great opportunities. So you need to be lookout for those opportunities rather than blaming each other as business partners. There is Venus in here in the 7th, so the issue is less likely to spiral into something big, but you need to make sure that you don't lose focus and do not waste opportunities because of that. Now let's talk about the Gemini sign. And Gemini sign is starting the year with two of the biggest planets, Jupiter and Saturn, in the 8th house of Capricorn, and along with it Rahu and Ketu axis is in the 12th and 6th house. So 4 of the slowest moving grahas, which are generally used to define a particular year, are all placed in what is known as trik houses, 6, 8 and 12. And this is how the new year chart looks like for Gemini. So there is definitely a feeling of, kind of getting cramped in a situation. Like, working hard, but not really finding the good returns. And many times asking questions like, okay, now what? Next what? Because these 4 grahas, Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter, Saturn, in this situation can give that kind of feeling, and the intensity of that could be low or high depending upon the strength of the individual horoscope. But the good thing in this chart is that we have Mercury placed in the 7th, which is aspecting the ascendant itself, and also Mars is well placed in the 11th house. Now these two together show a willingness to fight. However, Mars alone is, generally speaking, doesn't give fantastic results for Gemini ascendant. It needs some help from Jupiter, Saturn and Venus kind of planets. And the good news in that is that the help is on its way. Jupiter is going to move from Capricorn to Aquarius sign in 3 months of the new year, and more or less for almost 5.5 to pretty much 6 months, Jupiter will spend time in the Aquarius sign, which will be the 9th house for Gemini ascendant. And next year Saturn will also come to 11th sign, which is the 9th house, and relieving Gemini folks from the 8th house Saturn's pressure cooker kind of thing. So this cramped situation with many of the Gemini folks will be finding themselves will have at least partial resolution for the time period of 6 months or 5.5 to 6 months when Jupiter remains in the 9th house, and that will be a time of great relief. Whatever hard work, whatever efforts you are putting in which seemingly might be going nowhere, you might see probably at the minimum not as much as return as you want it or as you would like, but during this time you will start getting payback for all the hard work and patience which you have shown. So the main thing is that you pick up this Martian energy and remain stuck to the task. Keep on doing the things which you are doing. Try to learn something new. Try to develop new skills. Whatever you do now will start showing result as Jupiter moves to the next house, and we will see specific effects of every transit in later videos for sure. Health wise, the preponderance of many planets in the 6th, 8th and 12th can also give some little bit strange results, like bug bites or minor rashes without any particular reason. Those kind of things can come up. Also, with the placement of Venus along with Ketu and Rahu in the 12th house, with Moon kind of aspected from the 8th house by Jupiter and Saturn, can give eye related troubles too, like conjunctivitis, which is again a strange disease which can happen out of no reason, or a little bit whiteness in the eye or leucorrhea. Those kind of things are also common. However, health overall is expected to do much better as these planets, especially Jupiter and later on Saturn, but with Jupiter transiting into the 9th house and start aspecting the ascendant itself. So as the year progresses, it is a good indication of better health. Now let's move on to the watery sign of Cancer. Now Cancer folks are starting the year with Mars in the 10th house, which is awesome, and Saturn and Jupiter right across in the 7th, aspecting the Cancer sign itself, which is hosting Moon, which is the Lord of Cancer. So one really unique and important thing for Cancer folks is that this year they will have both the energy as well as perseverance to work hard. Now both of these things, a lot of energy, a lot of physical energy, and undying persisting attitude, they both are generally not associated with Cancer as a sign. It is more towards emotional side of the world. But with Mars and Saturn both aspecting Moon in the ascendant, you will have enough supply of both of these essential ingredients for success. So this could be quite an important year as far as expanding your professional horizons are concerned, as far as increasing your customer base, getting to that next promotion is concerned. Especially with Saturn and Jupiter in the 7th for almost 6 months. Saturn will stay here, but Jupiter will move to the 8th house and then come back to your 7th. And we will talk more about the effects of these transits in the transit specific videos. But talking about the year in the nutshell, this year is going to give you unique opportunities for professional growth, and you are also set up to grab them and utilize them for your own good. Now one thing to take care here, especially with the position of Mars given and as well as Mercury, that if your professional or business work has any kind of fire hazard, then please be little bit careful about it, as there are slight indications of small cuts and burns kind of things, and also loss to the property. But it's something which can be averted with due precautions. The year also shows that you will easily not only overcome your competition or your enemies, especially the ones who kind of competes with you in business, but may also turn some of those competitions into some or the other kind of business ally. So it's a little strange or tricky position, but many times it happens that people who start off as competing with you, end up being a kind of either develop a understanding, a business understanding, or a formal partnership also, because being partners can help you much more than being competitors. And this year, with the 6th Lord Jupiter being debilitated in the 7th house and 7th Lord Sun already, Saturn already present here, does indicate possibility of these kind of changes which could be good for you. In any ways, it does show success over your competition too. Another important thing, because Saturn is quite strong during most part of this year, and it has direct aspect on the sign of Cancer as well, you should be good with your labor. If you have profession or work which relates to any kind of blue collar labors, or your subordinates in your office or work, or people who report to you, please be extra cautious in being completely fair with them, because Saturn being strong and in such a position, that overlooking this aspect can cause you many missed opportunities. Now let's quickly talk about some health related things. Mostly health wise it's okay, but especially for women and women who are trying to have a baby, the positions here are kind of showing some kind of monthly cycle issues, especially with Venus and Ketu in 5th, Mercury and Sun in 6th, and then Sun and Saturn and Jupiter in 7th, when 5, 6, 7 with even Mars aspecting the Ketu and Venus here. When all these three houses have one or the other malefic, it can adversely affect women's health, especially around the areas of ovaries, etc., and can cause increasing acidic nature in the body as well. And couple this with the debilitated Jupiter, it does show some delay in conceiving a baby. However, as Jupiter moves away from Saturn, those things will slowly subside. But this is one aspect which comes out very clearly. So if women who were facing some kind of issues like this, one simple thing they can do is probably have some or the other form of turmeric, very small amount, but regularly, that can be very beneficial. Now let's move on to the Leo sign. And the Leos are beginning their year with Jupiter and Saturn, the two big planets, in the 6th house, and at the same time Rahu in the 10th. Now the first thing it indicates is that there could be a change in the normal circle of people with whom you interact on day-to-day basis. And with Moon at the beginning of the year in the 12th house, this can indicate change in the job, change in the business, or doing business with a new partner or new contracts. Now I kind of at least know two people who have recently got new jobs and they were looking for a job for a long time now. And that happened as Jupiter and Saturn came pretty close to each other in the 6th house. So in that sense, it's a good news. If you are looking for a job change, new work environment, maybe even transfer of some sorts, then that will be on the cards. But that change would also mean going away from a routine which you are comfortable with, and which invariably means working hard and learning something new. And especially with Jupiter Saturn in the 6th house, and in the early part when Jupiter will be weaker, this indicates working hard. Now remember, for about 6-month period in this year, Jupiter will come to your 7th house. That would be a good time for the rewards of this hard work which you put in now, but working through new tricky situations, potentially working more hours than you normally do, which will be beneficial later on, is definitely on the cards. There is also potentially a lot of travel and expenditure. Jupiter and Saturn both are aspecting 12th house, which is hosting Moon. So not just travel, but a lot of expenditure in that travel. And also be careful about any kind of theft, especially if you are traveling overseas, and more so during the time when Jupiter and Saturn both are in the 6th. And we will talk about the transit effects of these planets in other videos, obviously. Another important thing is try to be careful in lending money to others or taking on new debts. Now good thing is Mars is in the 9th house, which will strengthen your luck. So that's kind of taken for expanding the business or loans of that nature. They will be fruitful, but money spent just for, let's say, show off or buying some fancy things, try and avoid that as much as possible. Now another unique thing possible in this year is you might find yourself in many precarious situations where you can feel troubled because of no apparent reason or because of no apparent fault of yourself. Say, for example, you got become victim of theft while you are traveling in a foreign country, or you missed an important mail, or your driving license got lost or got stolen, and now you have to kind of run around government offices or authorities to get a new one, or suddenly finding new opposition in workplace where you expected none, and some or the other, those kind of precarious situations can crop up during this year. Now they're not going to be too bad, it's just that they're going to be nagging. So one thing, you already know it in advance, so try to be careful, especially careful when you are traveling. Keep photocopies of your important documents or soft copies of documents, so that if at all you get in trouble, it's easier to come out of it. And also get involved in any kind of, or restart any kind of spiritual practice which you follow. It could be yoga, or it could be meditation, or any particular deity for which you do mantras. Do that. Especially Shiva mantras are especially helpful in such situations for Leo sign. So just take refuge in that. You have a strong 9th house which can sort of take care of many such things. In health wise, if you have diabetes, or if you are prone to diabetes, or have some kind of skin related issues, any kind of eczema, those things can come up also. But overall, this will be a good time to do something new and expand your horizon in this year. Now let's talk about the Virgo sign. Virgo folks are starting this year with Jupiter and Saturn, two big planets, in the 5th house. And at the beginning of year, Mercury, the Lord of Virgo, will be well placed in the 4th house in a Jupiter sign. And while this happens, Rahu will be occupying 9th house for almost the whole year. So the very first thing which comes from this chart is Mars having aspect on the moon in the 11th house, along with Jupiter and Saturn aspecting this, is an indication of many new contacts and many new friends. Some of these friends and contacts could very well be of a very different background than yours, different religion or different social background, different country, and so on. So it is going to be a good time to connect with new people, and those friendships will be helpful in longer term too. But you should not rush and try to convert any of those contacts into any kind of business or personal relationship too early. See, Moon's presence here with Mars gives this tendency to rush into things pretty fast. Now the good thing is Jupiter has an aspect here, but Jupiter will be weak for some part of the year when it is in the very close proximity of Saturn. But little bit patience, little bit evaluating any new contacts or relation you make before taking it to any next level, be it personal or business, is highly advisable. Now let's talk about health. Usually the general indication with Mercury well placed in this 4th house is health wise things should be okay. Yet affliction of Moon by Mars and Saturn, and Mars in the 8th house itself, shows issues like high blood pressure. So if you are prone to that, or if your family has some kind of history related to that, then be careful about this. Now generally Virgo folks are pretty level headed, and with Saturn and Jupiter in the 5th house, you are not very likely to lose your patience. But the beginning happening is with Mars in the 8th, which is also aspecting Moon as well as Ketu. So please be a little careful, especially when you are driving with your siblings. The indications here are not of any kind of bodily harm or anything, but some harm or dents to vehicles, because Venus is in direct aspect of Mars along with Ketu in the 3rd house. So damage to property, damage to car or vehicles, especially when you are with your siblings, is possible. So you got to be a little careful in this regard. Now the placement of Mercury in the 4th along with Jupiter, Saturn in the 5th, which generally tends to give you new opportunities, and with Rahu also in the 9th, gives a very good indication for the professional front, especially for people who are in job. Virgo is a sign which generally loves to do multiple things. They are very analytical, and with Mercury well placed, they have the mental agility to handle multiple things. And the indications here are that if you are in job, you might get chances to do business, like a shadow business or a second option other than your primary source of earning. And in fact, you can get that chance to either help a friend or kind of remain in shadow, not actively or not be the face of that business, but support or help or do back office things for your friend or for some other business other than your primary job especially. Then those opportunities can arise in this year, and those things can add to your income. And because of that, you might also need to might require to kind of research and learn new things, learn more about a particular area of work which you are familiar with. You have the mental agility and inclination towards, but you need to develop more expertise, more deeper detailed knowledge into that field to be able to fruitfully help and also materially or monetarily benefit. So those kind of learnings, those kind of change, or those kind of handling multiple things are indicated in this year. But while you do that, be also mindful of any kind of legal issues, especially tax and monetary tax related things, not criminal issues but financial legal obligations. Though there is not much indication of a big trouble, you might get into small trouble, whatnot, but as I said, you have the mental agility to come out of it because of your smartness. But whatever extra thing you do, make sure you have proper paperwork for that. So these are some of the key areas which come out from a Virgo perspective. Now let's move on to Libra. So talking about Libra sign, so Libra folks are starting this year with Saturn and Jupiter, two big planets, in the 4th house, while the Lord of Libra sign will be in the 2nd at the beginning. And one very important aspect is that Lord of 9th house, which is Mercury, placed in the 3rd house and having a direct aspect on 9th as well. So first thing, professionally, which is from the 10th house where Moon is placed in its own house, this year could prove to be very, very good, especially for some of the professions which are related to Mercury, as Mercury has aspect on the 9th house, which is, if you are a writer, publisher, editor, and because Mars is very strongly placed in Kendra from Saturn as well as Jupiter, so anything related to metals or government jobs, land, especially real estate agents, this year could prove very good for you. Now, in general, after 3 months when Jupiter moves to the next house, but Saturn will remain in the 4th itself, what this indicates is that this is the time to think a little bit long term, especially because Jupiter is going to move to the next house and then after 2-3 months come back to the 4th, and later in the year, around August, September time frame, Jupiter will move back to the 5th house, and that will be the time when whatever long-term planning you come up with will start getting implemented, and from then on show results onwards. So there could be little bit confusion for people who are either trying to change their jobs or trying to start something new, but that confusion will be removed as the year progresses. Now let's talk about some health related things. So the very first thing, Ketu in the second house along with the Lord of Libra sign Venus, obviously Rahu placed 8th to it, and Mars also has an 8th aspect. So teeth trouble is very likely scenario which is coming your way this year. Cavities, problem with wisdom tooth, highly likely, along with some or the other form of headache. Now another peculiar thing, because of Mars aspect on the ascendant and Mars aspect not just on the ascendant but also on the Lord of the ascendant, which is Venus, and Rahu in the 8th, they together indicate things like a sudden fall or getting hit by a falling object. There are not much affliction, so it's not going to be serious, but things like getting hit by a frozen ice bag while you open the freezer door, weird strange things that could happen, especially because Rahu is in the 8th, which increase or which adds to that weirdness. Things which you don't, or things or places where you don't expect to get hurt, suddenly a falling ice bag has made your feet swollen. So swelling, getting hit by these kind of falling objects, that's possible during this year. And the only way to kind of lessen this is, whoever is your Ishtadeva or your spiritual practice which you do, especially Lord Shiva, if you do any practice related to like chanting his mantras, that can be very helpful. Another important thing which is indicated for both men as well as women horoscope is that if you're planning for having kids, then you might find some delays in it, some difficulties, at least in the first 3-4 months. After that, things can suddenly improve. But primarily because Jupiter, the Karak of kids, placed in 4th house in debilitated sign along with Saturn, some delays, but as Jupiter moves to the next house, things will improve. Now finally, two very important things which you can also see as some kind of remedy is, you have Venus and Ketu in the 2nd with Mercury, a sharp intellectual planet, in the 3rd, when Mars also has an aspect. So try not to find fault with others. You can create unnecessary enemies because of your speech. So yes, you have very good observation powers, you can observe things, but don't put it out to others in a way which can be offending to them. So just be careful about it. And second, try to have clutter-free home this year. This can be quite difficult for a Libra sign, especially with Saturn's and Moon's position to begin with. So keep your home and surrounding tidy. That could have a very relieving effect on this year. Otherwise, you have a wonderful time ahead. Now let's move on to the intense and enigmatic sign of Scorpio. Now Scorpio, interestingly, is starting the year with Ketu in the 1st and Rahu in the 2nd house or 7th house, and they will remain here for rest of the year. And also Venus, the planet of attraction, in the 1st house. Along with this, Mars, the Lord of Scorpio, is strongly placed but in the 6th, along with Jupiter and Saturn, the two of the slowest and biggest planets, in the 3rd house. So this really throws up some very interesting observations to look out for this year. 1. If you are unmarried, for the unmarried people, especially looking for romantic interest, can attract many new folks from unexpected quarters. And that's the combined effect of Rahu in the 7th, Venus aspecting 7th house Rahu, at the same time Mars having a direct aspect on the 12th house and being placed 12th to the 7th. So some of the folks which you kind of come across maybe from very different area or social circle than you are generally familiar with. and it is more in general it is for both male as well as female Scorpio friends, but it is more specific to men, unmarried men. But needless to say, the time when Jupiter is a little weak, which is at least during the first 2 months of this year, that is the time where you should be little careful with those relations. Second interesting thing which is arising primarily because of Jupiter and Saturn in the third house, which is actually the house or placement which shows a lot of hard work, new actions in life. And with Mars in the 6th in the own sign, coupled with that intense and sometimes unforgiving nature of Scorpio, that these combinations, they are showing you will get a lot of new opportunities. And your focus should be about how to grab those opportunities and make best use of them, and not just on finding and beating down your enemy to the dust. See, the placement here, especially Rahu in the 7th with Mars in the 6th in the fiery Aries sign, gives this tendency especially to the Scorpio folks where they just don't forget anything which is being done against them, and whoever their enemies are, they make sure they defeat them and defeat them badly. And that's not wrong, but as long as your opponents are not causing you troubles, just leave them alone, because what's happening here is a lot of your life energy, a lot of your attention, that is getting diverted into things which should be redirected towards finding new opportunities. Moon is in your 9th house and Mars is aspect on it as well, along with Jupiter and Saturn aspecting the 9th. So new opportunities, new things are on the horizon. They will take a lot of hard work though, okay? You have Saturn kind of completely ruling Jupiter right now. But those opportunities can bring great fruits. So focus on those opportunities. Do not worry about the hurdles, especially the enemies, or trying to just beat them badly, which a Scorpio native can easily get into. So save your life energy, focus on what's important and new aspects. Another important thing is your relations, especially relatives from father side. Moon placed in the 9th house, along with somebody like an elder brother, or people from your mother side family, your maternal uncle, your maternal cousins. They could also be helpful in these new opportunities and finding you those and kind of helping you capitalize on them. And with Moon, the active sign, Moon placed in the active sign of Cancer, third house being in the active sign with Jupiter and Saturn, this also shows travel related activities. Activities of travel will also bring about new fruits, especially the short term travel. Health wise, overall things looks okay. However, if you have some history of any kind of stone like gallbladder or kidney stones, and in women especially urinary tract issues, then they can resurface. So taking care about those, eating less calcium for the stone related issues, those kind of precautions should be taken. And another important thing which kind of comes up is, since Mars is in the 6th house in fiery sign aspecting Moon directly with the 4th aspect, at the same time 8th from this house housing Ketu and Mars aspect on it, is that there are chances of some kind of vehicle collisions, but more for your maternal family. So if you have your maternal uncles or maternal cousins, just ask them to drive safe, drive slow. But otherwise, this is the time for the great hard work which Scorpio is more than capable of, and also reaping the rewards of that. So let's move towards the sign of Sagittarius. Now Sagittarius are beginning this year with Mercury placed in the sign of Sagittarius itself, and the lord of the sign, Jupiter, in debilitated state in the 2nd, along with Saturn himself, and Rahu and Ketu axis in 6th and 12th house for pretty much the rest of the year. So the very first thing which comes to mind when you see this is moon in the 8th. So be careful during this year in any kind of water sports or any place near water bodies. Especially if you don't know swimming, then be little more careful. There are good benefic aspects of Jupiter, the ascendant lord itself, and also Mars, which is the lord of 5th house, a highly benefic planet. But the various combinations in the chart of entering the year 2021 shows that you should be little careful with water bodies, and not just water bodies, anything related to water within the human body also, and especially in the area of intestine, the 8th house, or excretory systems, because that's where the problem could be. Now since we are talking about health, taking another aspect of Jupiter and Saturn in the 2nd house, and you add to that the fiery planet of Mars and Rahu in the 5th and 6th with 8th house moon, it definitely shows issues or health problem arising due to what you eat, food and digestive tract, which kind of matches with excretory system related issues we talk about. And special care has to be taken when you are away from family. See, Saturn and Jupiter here in an active sign along with other combinations shows opportunities for travel away from home, and the same things shows problem with the food. So especially when you're away from family, which by the way is an indicator of 8th house moon also, you need to take extra care of your food habits during this year. Professional front, Saturn Jupiter both are in the Capricorn sign in the 2nd house, and coupled with that you have Mars, which is aspecting 11th as well as the 12th house from the 8th aspect. So new connections, new people from maybe either different walks of life or different countries altogether, new connections, making new connections and benefits from those business connections is definitely on the cards. And one good aspect of a strong 8th house when looked into this perspective is that it can also give you sudden gains, and this gain could be also of sudden ideas, sudden thoughts, sudden spur of inspiration, which could lead you to much needed new opportunities in new areas. That is very much possible, especially with Mercury in the 1st house as well. So try and keep a very open mind and very alert mind, which you already have by the way, but try to use that. And somewhat similar to the Scorpio horoscope this year, try not to concentrate on your enemies or your opponents unduly. I mean, if they are not causing you harm, try to concentrate on new ideas and new opportunities which are coming your way rather than focusing on defeating them. This is also starting with good indications related to share market, technical analysis, real estate, or any kind of profession where some deep insights are needed, because you have Mercury, planet of intellect, in the 1st, along with Mars very strongly placed in the 5th, can give you good success in these areas. Now let's move to the Adhibhautik sign of Capricorn. So the Capricorn natives are starting the year with Saturn and Jupiter, both the planets in Capricorn itself, and along with that Mars and Moon also occupying Kendra or cardinal houses in active sign. So this is actually an indicator of a lot of hectic and fervent activities. And also the great thing is that last year these two planets, Saturn and Jupiter, especially Jupiter, was placed in your 12th house, and it has now come to your first house for good and started a new cycle of 12 years. And pretty much Saturn and Jupiter both starting that new cycle together. Depending upon the strength of your own horoscope, has the potential to give many new opportunities, sometimes one after the other, especially as Jupiter starts moving a little bit further from Saturn. Those opportunities can also start showing their effect in terms of monetary gains and so on. But this year in general will be one with a lot of hectic activities which can even put strains on family life. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. But professions like, with Mars and Saturn being kind of kendra from each other, especially in the first and fourth, anything related to machineries or real estate, or you're starting the year with Venus in the 11th house aspected by Mars, the 8th aspect of Mars. And in such cases, things which are a little bit luxurious in nature, even things like artificial jewelry, scented candles and so on, those kind of businesses will do very well for Capricorn ascendant or Capricorn sign. And as you get those opportunities and utilize them for your good, one important thing to note is the year is beginning with Mercury placed in the 12th. So if you are planning to start any new business with family's wealth, or especially if money borrowed from your father's side family or your father, because Mercury is the lord of 9th house, then you should be a little bit extra careful. See, there are good indications of gains and profit this year, but because in the Varsha Kundali, the 9th lord is in the 12th, it is always beneficial to double check, take extra advice, check with the experts, especially when money from father's side family is involved. On the family front, the first thing you need to do is you have to be considerate towards your spouse. See, Capricorn ascendant natives, especially when Saturn is going to be transiting the ascendant or Capricorn sign itself, can easily get very possessive about their spouse. And the situation here in the chart with Moon also placed in an active sign in 7th house, and Moon being the lord of 7th house, well aspected by Mars and Saturn, shows that, and this is especially true for working spouses, that if you have working spouse, she may have herself a lot of travel or commitment towards her work. Your spouse's work life will also be throwing up new opportunities, new churning and new challenges, and she would or he would have to also have travels or adjusted schedule to meet those requirements. And Capricorn, being Capricorn with Saturn in the first house itself, doesn't really like much when their spouse's time gets consumed too much on their work front, and that a kind of possessiveness can come up. So just be a little more considerate and helpful on that front, and things will be good. From overall health perspective, your health, the Capricorn native's health, seems to be okay. They might need to take care of their spouse's health though, and for themselves, one thing, with all these hectic activities going on, Saturn in 1st, Mars in 4th, Moon in the 7th, Rahu and Ketu, which will always remain in this axis of 5 and 11 for the rest of the year, you need to make sure that you keep yourself really tidy all the time, and that includes keeping your house clutter free and well managed too, because that's another area which would need attention in this otherwise quite an active year. So now let's talk about Aquarius sign. And Aquarius is starting the year with Saturn and Jupiter, two big planets, especially Saturn being the lord of the Aquarius, being placed in the 12th house. Along with this, Rahu and Ketu will remain in the 4-10 axis throughout the year. So the most important keyword for Aquarius this year is one, long-term plan, and two, remain patient. And you must understand that the secret of successful life remains in knowing when to go slow and when to go full throttle. And this year, or let's say at least a large part of this year, is definitely a time to remain patient and think about long-term perspective. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to get any new opportunities in this year. Jupiter is going to spend almost 6 months in your first house, which will be a good time. Also, Saturn is going to go retrograde and direct in between these years, and we will talk about those transits in the transit specific effects. And also you are starting this year with Mars in the 3rd house, so some of the other new opportunities are always on horizon. However, the key word for this year will still remain long-term plan and patience. Another very important thing to remember throughout this year is that, see, the placement of position or placement of planets is such that you are going to get opportunities where you can do some or other kind of show off. You can flaunt your wealth or be ostentatious. But remember, this year is not the time to do that. No flaunting this year. No trying to impress anybody. No trying to impress your friend circle or your social circle. See, simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. Make this mantra at least this year of your life, because the placements are such that it can even make people, take on personal loans or debts to arrange that one big function, to, be impressive in the society and whatnot. But please just avoid those temptations which can come your way this year, and try not to take any kind of personal loan. Now again, I'm not saying that the whole of the year is like that, but bits and pieces, the parts of few months every now and then throughout the year will be like this. Therefore, I'm kind of exaggerating and saying it in a way so that I can draw the point home that no loans, no flaunting, live simple life, and think of long-term plan. Very soon you will be back into the game. Saturn, Jupiter are not going to stay here. Jupiter, in fact, by the end of the year will come to your first house, which will bring about some really nice opportunities. Can even rid you of some of the debts you might have taken. But Saturn is going to remain in 12th house for a little longer. So still about 12-13 months from now on, go easy. Your time to go full throttle is coming. So just prepare for it. Get yourself involved in some or the other kind of new learning. Understand about the market. Understand about the things which you want to do and try. This is not the time, where you just take loan and start doing a business. No. Understand. Learn it from grounds up. If you put that effort now, they will prove just very, very fruitful in coming 12 to 14 months. Now, as I said, I think a little earlier, that as Jupiter traverses to your first house, also Saturn goes retro and direct in between. Those will be the periods which will give you some new direction, some new ideas, some new thoughts, even new opportunities. So be on the lookout for those. Health wise, two important things which clearly comes from this chart is any kind of diabetes issue, food related thing, or skin issues. If you had any of them, take care. And another important thing which I forgot, that anything you do, anything new you try to do this year, see, the placement of Mars and Moon are such that you might be in some kind of rush. But do not neglect rules and regulations. Saturn, Jupiter in 12th house, it's like a time when, say, if you have stopped at 10 traffic signals, no problem. But if you jump one traffic signal, you will find a cop sitting right there. Now, as I said, these two planets are not going to remain in the 12th house for the whole year, but just as a general rule of thumb, follow all rules and regulations. Don't try to break any. Keep that mantra for a successful 2021. Also, take care of pet and pets and animals of which are abundant, you know, if you can, because that could be a very important remedy. So just do that and wait for your time to go full throttle. Now let's talk about the Pisces sign. So the Pisces sign is starting the year with Jupiter and Saturn, two big planets, in an auspicious 11th house. Along with that, the Rahu Ketu axis, Rahu being in the 3rd house of Taurus and Ketu in the 9th house, is also quite favorably placed for Pisces. And in the beginning of the year, Moon is placed in the 5th along with Mars in the 2nd. So this actually indicates a very good time for wealth creation. And with preponderance of planets in the active sign and houses related to wealth, it also shows a lot of new activities, new things, new business ideas or new job coming up your way. And for a large part of this year, Pisces can make a very good use of this opportunity. Another quite peculiar thing which we can see is placement of Venus is in the 9th house, which is also favorably placed from the Jupiter and Saturn, that is in the 11th from them. At the same time, Lord of 7th, which will be Mercury, also well posited in a Jupiterian sign of Sagittarius. So one of the indication of this is if you have any business or business plan which will involve collaboration or partnership with either your wife or sisters or women from your family, it could also be your cousin, then those ventures could be quite successful as well during this time. Now, one of the things to take care during this year especially is your health. And with Mars being placed in the 2nd, Rahu in 3rd, Jupiter initially, starting the year will be under huge influence of Saturn. And Jupiter is very important for Pisces as far as the health is concerned, because it's the Lord of Pisces sign. And also overall felicity of health for every human being, Jupiter is responsible. So issues like teeth problem or problem in joints, because we are seeing Mars as well as Saturn have an aspect on the 8th house. So issues related to excretory system or any hereditary issue if runs in the family, those can easily come out during this year. And whenever Saturn's influence will be great on Jupiter, that means issues related to fatigue can also set in. Now, another important thing which Pisces should take care in this year is spicy food. You might develop a tendency to eat a lot of spicy food with the start of Mars in the 2nd house, but that needs to be curbed. And also use of your speech properly. Mars in the 2nd, Rahu in the 3rd. These two together is not a good indication. And Pisces, which are generally not quite aggressive or especially do not use their speech aggressively yet, this year they need to be more careful regarding this. But as far as gaining respect, gaining recognition for your work, finding new connections, this seems very fruitful year for Pisces. So friends, these were some really quick snapshot analysis of what year 2021 has in store for each zodiac sign. We will obviously look into the effects of each of the transits in coming days. Please check out the link below to know more about yourself, to know more about your moon sign, your ascendant, and so on. Thank you so much for being with me. I hope you like this. Please do share your comments. I would love to hear from you as well. Thank you again for being with me so far, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.